Yo, what's good? Welcome to Counter Currents. This is your host, Petey Steele.
And your co-host, Elena Torres. And today we have a guest that I'm particularly a big fan of. Let me tell you guys a little thing before I officially introduce him. So this next guest, let me say, sometimes when you're newer in comedy and you meet someone newer, as in a few years in, someone who's not only a hilarious comedian, a vet, and you go to their house. So I went to the Comedy Store about a year ago. I'm like 7 months pregnant. You know, a comedian in common that we have introduced me to this person, and this guest showed me around the Comedy Store, which is the mecca of comedy. You know, gave my husband and I a great seat. We watched him crush a late night set, and he was just the coolest guy. And that in comedy is a rare thing. So this next guest, I'm so happy he's doing our podcast. Please welcome the very funny Cort McCown.
Hey.
Yay.
Absolutely right. I am the nicest guy, and I always trust the late night sets. But it was good. It was fun. It's kind of like, it's so weird to think like that place was like as crazy and as buzzing and as humming as it was. It's been closed almost a year now.
I know. And I feel really lucky that I was able to go at sort of the height. Because I mean, the Comedy Store has been through, you know, so many highs and lows, but I feel like last year especially, I mean, the energy there, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, but the energy there was insane. I mean, you have comics doing podcasts outside, you know, you had all the people in the back, and it was just like, I think it's something we all took for granted for a long time.
I think so, and I think it'll be back. I don't know. I mean, it's going to obviously look different. I think
Right.
Our whole world is going to look different when this thing's completely over.
Right.
But you've had a lot of guys like, you know, Rogan's moved to Austin. You've had, you know, Theo moved to Nashville. You know, you've had some, some unfortunate things happen to some other comics, you know, and that I love, you know. I mean, and it's like, so, I mean, we'll see, but I mean, it's the Comedy Store. I've been there for 18 years. I remember when we used to go in on a Wednesday night and we'd have to wait until 10:30 before we had 4 audience members to start the show.
Right.
And, you know, and then cut to, you know, last year on Wednesday night, there are 3 rooms sold out, you know, with 2 shows. You know, it's insane. So it's all cycles, you know, it all cycles. But the Comedy Store is the Comedy Store. It'll always be there. And, you know, it's my home. I love it.
So do you think that's your sort of plan for, you know, this weird new normal of comedy? Are you a loyalist with it? Do you think eventually it'll come back? Or how do you feel about all these guys who are moving and saying that maybe all that's over?
I don't think it's over. I think the Comedy Store is never been one comic. It's never been one group of comics, you know? I mean, I love Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan's, you know, he's awesome. And he was definitely there, you know, and was an integral part of the, you know, the Comedy Store's, you know, rise. But I also think that has to do with, you know, there was a lot of other comics that were there too. Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, Chris D'Elia, you know, Whitney Cummings.
Joey Diaz. Woo!
Yeah, Joey fucking Diaz. And, you know, and the list just goes on and on and on. Tom Papa, Harlan Williams, you know, Steve Byrne. I mean, Steve Renazizi. I mean, you can just, you know, the names don't stop. You can't, I mean, I could keep going. Steve Simone. You could say, you know, Brian Moses, Tony Hinchcliffe. You know, I mean, just the list, you know, Eliza Schlesinger. You know, I mean, I could go on.
Sure.
Whole podcast is naming all the comics that perform there all the time. And you know, so it will come back, and it will be back, and it'll be as strong as ever. And you know, it'll go through a phase too. I mean, you know, I'm not a, you know, in my 4th year of comedy, and on the, you know, there's people that are going to come up. You know, there are the guys that are rising now, Fahim Anwar. You know, you've got all these guys that are, you know, starting to, you know, build their huge followings, and you know, and they'll just keep getting better and better and better. I mean, there's guys you haven't even seen yet that are so funny. You know, there's JF Harris, there's, you know, Billy Bonnell. There's just, I mean, it just goes on and on, Jessica Michelle Singleton. I mean, I could just keep going.
Mhm.
It's that plethora of great comedians. And, and I think the difference now is that wasn't around, 8-9 years ago when it really saw its rise, and it's, and it is that now comedy wasn't popular.
Yeah.
I mean, it was popular, but it wasn't like it is now. I mean, are you kidding me? They're selling out shows in vans and alleys right now. I mean, it's like when clubs come back, come on,
Yeah.
Yes. We had an opportunity at one time. I think it was back in October, November, when the Comedy Store thought we had outdoor dining going,
Mhm.
and we were doing comedy through a glass window to
No
people
way.
on the patio. Yeah, I mean, I felt like a hooker in Amsterdam.
Oh my gosh.
It was horrible, but it was what it was. But people were coming in hordes to sit on the patio, and then they got a deal with the city. The city said, "Okay, you guys can put a stage up outside. You can do parking lot shows, and just social distance the tables as long as it's all outside." And they announced shows on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. No lineup. They sold out 3 shows in an hour.
Wow.
Wow.
With no lineup.
Wow.
No, so I mean, when it comes back, get ready. It's going to be cool.
Yeah. And when you said you started at the Comedy Store 18 years ago. Did you start comedy in LA, or did you move and end up at the Comedy Store?
No, I used to do a lot of I used to work in television and film. That's what I started out doing.
Doing what? In front of the camera, behind the camera?
In front of the camera. So I used to do
nice.
a lot. How old are you?
Me?
Yeah. You could just 30s?
Yeah.
Okay. So I used to do a lot of 80s movies. So
okay.
I was in movies that you probably never heard of. Like I co-starred in a movie called Can't Buy Me Love. And
with Matthew Modine, right?
No, Patrick Dempsey, but close.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Petey, you're usually pretty good with 80s movies.
Yeah. But oh well. Anyhow.
I did Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. I used to do a lot.
Yeah, I remember Teen Wolf.
So I used to do a lot of that stuff. And then in 2001, I had a friend that said, "Man, you should really, I always wanted to do stand-up. I'd never done it." And, and I was in my 30s, and I was like, why not? So I took a class, which I don't recommend to a lot of people, but there was a guy who taught a class, and I got to be honest, he was great. It was just he was great. And it was this guy named Adam Barnhart, who's a Comedy Store regular. He's crazy as fuck. And I don't think anybody can teach stand-up, but he taught you how to find your voice. Mm-hmm. And then what the deal was is after you did a 6 or 8 week course, I don't even remember how long it was, then you got to perform Sunday night in the belly room at the Comedy Store. Mm-hmm. This is 2001. So the belly room at the Comedy Store in 2001 was shit. It was a shit. It was nothing. And so, but I performed, it was what, as familiar with bringer shows, it was a bringer show, and you brought people, and people came, and the room was full. I did well, I did 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever it was. I did well. I didn't destroy, but I did well. And the guy said, "Listen, if you want to be a part of our Sunday night," he did shows every Sunday night there. So if you want to be a part of Sunday night, he goes, you come in and you'll put the placards on the table, set up the room, put candles on the tables, and we'll give you 3 minutes on Sunday nights. So I started doing that, and then I started doing open mics, and then it just built. And then I started doing my own room in the belly. I started doing my own show in the belly room. Back then, anybody could. If you wanted to do a show, I've known Pauly Shore for 30 something years. Mm-hmm. So I just went to Paul and I said, me and a friend of mine wanted, that he knew. I said, we want to do our own show. And we started, and we did these shows, and we built that show into a bigger show. And, it's just that show built into we sold it to Las Vegas, and
Oh,
we
wow.
had a show in Las Vegas for 9 years.
Mhm.
Wow.
So
That's
that's
awesome.
really how I got my chops. Is I started at the Comedy Store, and after about 3 or 4 years, I got passed by Mitzi when Mitzi was still there, and which is, I think, my greatest accomplishment in comedy is I got passed by Mitzi Shore at the Comedy Store, and and then start working out at the Comedy Store, and then on weekends I'd go to Vegas and work, and it's just, and here I am, fucking
Yeah.
18 years later.
And when you started coming from the acting world, I have it's really interesting here because I have a very similar story. I started comedy when I was 30 after acting on Mexican telenovelas through my 20s. And did you feel like when you started, you had to sort of check your ego because you were co-starring in these big movies, and then at comedy, nobody cares if you have credits if you're not funny?
Well, I think that I had worked a lot in the 80s and not in the 90s. So my ego was pretty fucking smashed already.
Right.
So I didn't have a ton of ego to
Right.
But no, the one thing that was great for me was I had done so much theater. I was an actor,
Right. Right. So was I. Yeah.
I did Shakespeare, and I did theater, and everything. So it's like the one thing that I think helped me was I wasn't afraid to be in front of a live audience. Like being in front of an audience, didn't bother me, and still doesn't bother me.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if you're eating shit, it doesn't feel good. But, I've had nights on stage, and doing a show where I've completely fucked up, and it's like, and you don't get to leave after 10 minutes. You're there on stage for another hour, or, however long it is. And, so being in front of people and, and failing was never really a problem for me.
Right.
It still isn't. And then, the other thing too is, being at the Comedy Store and doing the, original room there, it's one of the hardest rooms I've ever done, ever. And I think maybe like Gotham in New York might be as difficult of a room. And I don't mean that it's just that it's not a local room.
Yeah.
When you're in the original room at the Comedy Store, it's not a local room. You can't go in there and talk about, LA things, and, you can, but not everybody's going to get it. You've got people there from all over the country and all over the world. It's the same as New York, and, Gotham, those clubs. And I find that, some of those rooms are harder. And when you hone your, your skills or whatever you want to call it in a room like that, then when you go other places, you don't feel as much pressure, I guess is a good one.
Sure. Would you say, like, the way you described the original room and then Gotham, they sound more like tourist attractions almost? And would you say that's apt or not really?
Well, I mean, I would say that I wouldn't call it a tourist attraction because I don't think it's a touristy type, atmosphere. I guess they're comedy fans, but
Right.
I think when you're in there, you got to make them laugh. Like the difference is Gotham is lit. You can see the first rows. At the Comedy Store in the original room, you can see the front row and maybe a little beyond that. That's it. That's all you can see. It's a black room. The lights are bright, and you're up there. It's not a big stage, and it's a rough room, man. And especially like you're saying, like I do a lot of late night. I don't have a lot of TV credits compared to some guys, so I'm not going on at 10 o'clock. I'm going on at 11:30, 11:45, and they're tired, and and you got to work, and it's like, and people, I mean, it's like, that's when you get like, fuck yeah, if I can kill, if I can do well, shouldn't say kill, if I can do well at 11:45 on a Wednesday night in the original room, there's no room in the country that I can't walk in and feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I agree. I think late night sets in general that's what separates sort of like the men from the boys of comedy, because when people are tired, they've already laughed a bunch. If the show's been great, it's harder because they've already laughed a bunch. And by the time it gets to you, if you're later, it's like sometimes it's hard to get the last out of it, right?
It's just they're tired.
Yeah.
And or you've got, drunks and, or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
it always, it's just not an easy room,
And do you think maybe it's harder because the bar there is set so high because it's the Comedy Store, because people have this idea that people go in and are like,
no, I don't think so. I just think it's just a tough room.
Yeah.
It always has been. As long as I've been there, it's always been it's my favorite room, but it might be one of the toughest rooms in comedy.
Yeah. The Comedy Store just had a big loss, right? With Jeff, the piano player. Did you know him?
Yeah, I knew Jeff well. That was really sad.
Yeah.
Jeff was one of those guys, we had a Zoom memorial for him, and it was fantastic. Brian Holtzman, I love Brian Holtzman. And, Holtzman was in there, and a lot of employees, a lot of people, that, shared great stories. And Jeff so there's a piano that sits next to the stage in the original room. And Jeff would play every comic on stage and off stage. And he would announce who the next comic was, because the original room's different than a lot of other clubs in the sense that we have a show every night, starts at 9:00 and it goes till 2 a.m. And it's one continuous show. So there's not a show from 9 to 10, 10 to 11. There's a different comic every 15 minutes from 9:00 until 2:00 in the morning. And that's just the way it goes. And some people, so it just goes like that. And then you have pop-ins, and, there's some great video of him with Dave Chappelle and, with so many other people over the years. And Jeff was just one of the sweetest, he was an entertainer, but he was just one of the sweetest guys. And, and he was gay, which was fun. And you could, you could just give him shit all the time. But he had, one of my favorite stories about him is when I was fairly new, and he sorry, an email just popped in. So when I was fairly new, I probably had about 4 or 5 years sober, and so Carlos Mencia would come in, and Carlos Mencia would come in, and he would bump people, and when he would bump you, it would, sometimes an hour and a half, and it depends, it's just the way he was, and he was just a douche. And he was a douche back then. I haven't talked to him in a long time, so I'm not saying, I'm not commenting on his personality or his character now. But at that time, he was a real douche. He would come in and he would, but what happens is you have to, he would go check in at the front. Carlos would go in to Tommy, who was the booker at the time. He'd say, Tommy, I want to go up. And so he'd go, okay, go tell Jeff. And so you have to tell Jeff, because Jeff tells the comic on stage who the next comic is. And so, but Jeff would see Carlos come in, and Jeff would know I was next. And he knew what that meant. And Jeff was such a sweet guy. Jeff would avoid Carlos. So he would run around and he would hide. He would hide in parts of the comedy store because it was empty. The rooms weren't filled everywhere, and he would hide so Carlos couldn't find him. So Carlos wouldn't, Carlos wouldn't do that. And then Jeff would just bounce in the room. He'd sit behind the piano. He'd go, oh, next is Cort McCown, and it would, it's like, and Carlos was a douche, but he wasn't such a douche that he would yell, no, it's me. He wanted to be announced as this great,
right.
this thing. So he would do shit like that. And,
That's
you know,
awesome.
and he even did it one time where I had a little more time. I probably had 6 or 7 years. Carlos came in and Jeff avoided him, and Carlos waited inside the original room for Jeff. And when Jeff came in, he grabbed Jeff and he goes, Tommy says, I can go next. I'm next. And Jeff goes, well, I already told Cort he's next, so you tell Cort. And
Oh,
Carlos came to me and he goes, hey, I'm going to go next. I go, oh, that's cool. I'll go home. And he goes, why, man? I go, because you're going to do 45 minutes to an hour.
yeah.
And it's already 11:45. I'm not waiting until 1:00, and he goes, I'm not going to do that. And I go, and I just go, look me in the eye. And as a man, tell me you're not going to do 45 minutes. I go, you're going to do your 15-minute bump. And he goes, at the most 18.
Yeah.
And he did 18 minutes.
Really?
Oh, wow.
He gave me a shitty intro, but he did 18 minutes. But he used to do that, man. He was not the friendliest, it was whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody in comedy has heard the stories, I think, and heard.
Yeah.
You're not the first to say that was kind of a
I'm
dude.
not commenting on his character today. I'm
Right.
just commenting on his character. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So,
And you said when you were sober when you started comedy?
yes.
Petey and I are also both sober. So
Yep.
do you think sobriety was part of your decision?
100%.
Comedy?
So the guy that got me into it was a guy that introduced me to the class was a guy, and the teacher was sober as well. So,
Oh, nice.
so it was kind of this kind of cool, like, and I think, I think part of it had to do with, I just, at that time, I was just kind of in a place where I was like, I'm ready for something new.
Right.
I was ready for change. And I think I had probably maybe 7 months sober,
Mhm.
something like that, maybe something like that. I think I started 2001 or 2002. I got sober in 2001.
Mhm.
So I'm a little over 19 plus years sober. So
Congratulations.
That's great.
That's awesome. And do you think there were points, I mean, I'm sure it's both, but do you think there were points where, because it became comedy was part of what sort of the beginnings of your sobriety, do you think it helped to keep you sober? Or do you think there were parts where it was like really hard, where you're at comedy parties or whatever, and you have to just be like, I got to get out of here?
I got to just say that, the truth is that when I got sober, I was done.
Yeah.
I didn't get sober at 22. I got sober much later. And when I was done, I was done. And I don't look at, do I miss smoking a joint, with the guys in the back? Yeah. But it doesn't mean I can't hang with the guys in the back. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm on the road with, rent is easy. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm on the road with guys that smoke weed and drink and, and I love being around these guys. It just doesn't bother me. It's like, it just doesn't bother me. It feels good to say I've never been on stage drunk or high.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was done the same way. I've been sober about 4 years, and it was just a dare that got me into comedy, and it worked. I didn't believe it for the first month. And then I was like, okay, this seems cool, but I enjoy, hanging around with people doing that stuff, because like you say, when you're done, that means you're done. It's not as tempting as like if you're just kind of, testing water.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I don't think one affects the other, I really don't, and there's a lot of comics that are, I did a show in Vegas for 9 years, and, there were a lot of guys that came out there, were sober, and so, I've met some great guys, in comedy that, that don't drink, don't drink and use. And it's like, and there's some that do that. I don't really know of any guys that are successful in this business that I would say, have a problem.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Right. And do you think that's a difference sort of with being in this business now versus, maybe in like the 80s, early 90s, you have like the Sam Kinnisons and sort of these people where that was such a big part of their persona. Do you think that's something nowadays what is it that nowadays just doesn't really allow for that?
Well, I don't think that I shouldn't say that it doesn't allow for that. I'm sure it allows for that.
Right.
I just don't think that it translates. I think comedy's risen a bit. I think if you look at, the guys I look up to, the guys that, Bill Burr, Bill Burr is a great example. I mean, that guy, that guy doesn't go on stage drunk, I mean, it's like, as much as Bert Kreischer is the machine, Bert Kreischer's not drunk on stage. Bert Kreischer is, he likes to have a drink. It's like, Joe Rogan smokes weed. Joe Rogan's, it's like I respect them so much, and it's just that thing. It's like, just because I can't do it doesn't mean other people can't do it. I think a lot of times people get the wrong idea about, about people that are so, that don't, it's like, like, I think someone said the other day, it's like, oh, you don't like drugs. It's like, no, I like drugs way more than you like drugs. You like drugs. I really like drugs. I like drugs a lot more than you do. And it's, but you look at the guys that, that used to kind of drink heavy, that, kind of got to levels of success that, tapered it off and, and don't really look at Dave Attell, who's probably one of the greatest joke writers in our lifetime, and Dave, Dave's a great example of just what a great work ethic, and, I was so lucky that, Jeff Ross kind of took me under, Jeff Ross and Dave Attell kind of took me in a couple years ago, and they let me start opening the Bumping Mics tour.
Oh,
and,
God, that I only saw the Netflix series, but God, that was so funny.
It was
funny.
maybe the funnest, we were doing theaters when the pandemic hit, and we got to do some theaters together, and I got to go on the road with those guys. And, it's one of the highlights of my years in comedy is getting to work with these guys, not just because of, getting to do theaters and, because I'm not selling out theaters, they're selling out theaters, but the generosity of those two guys that would, come in and they would bring me on the road, and they would treat me like, they wouldn't treat me any different than they treated each other. And, and they would, they'd go, Cort, go up and, open the show and do what, what do you want me to do? 20? They go, no, do a half hour. He goes, if you're really rolling, do a little more, you'll feel it. You'll know,
That's awesome.
And it's like, and that's just, I just love guys like that. And I was lucky. I got taken on the road by Dice. Dice took me out for a little while. Bobby Lee took me out for a while. Harlan Williams. And then, now I get to go out with friends like Ren Azizi and Steve Byrne. And, I still go out with Harlan every now and then. And it's like, and it's not that they come out and they treat me as some opener or something. It's just, it's like the reality of this world, the reality of comedy is I don't have a name that sells a ton of tickets. I just don't, it's just the way it is. And it's like, and so, I'm still not in that, like, I haven't got to that next, I'll get there. It's the thing about comedy. The great thing about comedy is that there's no age,
Yeah.
Look at Lewis Black, look at anybody that, it doesn't have an age limit. So if you're funny, you're funny.
For sure.
Right.
Well, in terms of growth like that, I mean, is there any particular metric that you use to kind of measure growth? I mean, in terms of like some people say they take it like a marathon versus a sprint, but is there any way you gauge progress over a long period of time? Because for some people, it can take a lot longer, or I don't know. What do you say?
I just go through, I go through peaks and valleys. It's just like sometimes it has a lot to do with writing. I go through long, hard slumps of writing. And it's where, I just don't get that much new stuff. I try new stuff. It's like, I'm more of a storytelling comic. I like to tell stories. I'm not a setup, punch guy. I don't, do quick jokes. So it's kind of hard. I shouldn't say it's hard. It's just, and part, I don't want to say lazy. I'm not lazy about it. It's just, if it doesn't inspire me, why would it inspire an audience? And so I've, this last year has been really tough to find stuff that is inspiring to talk about, because I don't want to go do a bunch of pandemic jokes.
No. Yeah.
Has
there been anything that you've been able to, I mean, cling is the wrong word, that you've ever been hold on to that's helped you with some inspiration this year?
No.
Yeah.
Been a shit. It's just
me neither.
It's like I see people like, I won't do Zoom comedy.
Yeah.
I hate it.
It's
horrible. There's been some parking lot shows in LA, people do in front of in the cars, and I'm not saying it hasn't been something I've been like, oh my God, I've got to get on the parking lot shows. It's like,
yeah.
I was fine telling jokes, through a glass to people on the patio. And the funny thing is I went from March until I think it was August before I even told a joke.
Yeah.
And that's the longest I'd gone in 18 years. Yeah. And it was hard. It was hard. I ate shit for the first, 3-4 nights. And, and now they shut it back down in November. So it's been 2.5 months since I've been on, been up again. But I do find now I'm kind of, I'm getting a little better at, doing little notes, and, and I don't feel like, we'll see.
Yeah.
See.
I think too, a lot of comics now that are, you'll hear, not a lot, a few comics will be like, I've been writing. It's like, how do you write when you can't go bring it to the stage? Like, stuff, comedy in your head, like, it gets stale. It's not the same. You have to try stuff.
Oh, I've had so many jokes I've written down that were such pieces of shit when they went on stage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, it's like some guy that's never done comedy looking in the mirror at a bar telling jokes, thinking he could do it,
I know.
Luck, but it's, I think we'll see what, we'll see. I think it's going to come back. I think it's going to come back strong. I think it's going to be as good as ever. And I think the crowds are going to be, they need it, I think that's going to, I think that's going to be real positive. And, I just think everything's going to be okay. I just think we've got to get through, we've got to get through this, and I think as, I think it's hard, because I think they're the hardline people that are, especially people that are susceptible to this, I mean, I've lost friends, through this thing, and it's difficult, and it's like, some people get it and are okay, they get the COVID and they're okay. They're, and there's some people that struggle for months with it.
Mm-hmm.
Will die from it, and it's not everyone that's 75, and but there's people that have opinions, and there's a lot of people are in Austin, Texas doing shows, and it's it's wide open and maskless, and and it's like
silly.
And I'm not judging, it's like that. If you're comfortable, cool.
Yeah.
I just don't know that I've made it this far. I think I might hang on a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring a good point though, because I think in the beginning it was really easy to judge people for, at least for me, for like their behavior of not following COVID guidelines. But over time, it's like, look, this is hard and shitty for everyone. If you want to make a certain choice, I don't think judgment is the way to approach it the right way. I think we kind of have to look at ourselves as individuals and be like, do I want to take a risk or not?
Yeah.
True. You know, then again, I look at the newspaper and I see the lung comparisons between people wearing masks, chronic smokers, and then the fucking guys that are recovering from like a month of COVID. And it's like, holy shit, this is terrible.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is it's not, you know, you just got to take a stance where it's like, hey man, you know, I'm not judging you. Do what you want to do. You know, it's just that, you know, don't walk in a Trader Joe's without a mask if they're asking you to wear a mask. And don't be a dick about it.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, and I think that's the difference in, you know, the comics going to Austin and doing that, or if someone asks them to put a mask on, they put a mask on.
100%.
And it's like, you know, and there's cities that are doing comedy, you know, there's places that are doing it. And, you know, and I think there's, you know, some comics, it's like, you know, they need, you know, they need to work, and damn it, God bless them if they can, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And sometimes, you know, sometimes when these people, you'll see shows, and it's hard as a comic not to get like that FOMO sometimes, where you'll see people doing shows, you're like, man, should I be doing that? But then you think about, well, could I die? Is it worth it? Not really. I mean, but it depends. Yeah, some people, that's more important.
Well, I just think, I think it's like, I think, you know, if you were 25 and be different, you know?
Yeah.
I'm a little over 40.
What?
And it's like, I'm not, you know, I mean, it's like, I've got to travel some for, you know, to do stuff, but it's like, you know, I wear a mask, and then I wear another thing over it. It's like, I'm like, you know,
right.
I carry like wipe. I mean, it's like, I'm like a little weird. It's like, but so far so good. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. You know?
Yeah, I'm the same. When the outdoor shows started, I would bring, you know, my own mic or mic covers and a mask and gloves to the shows. And, you know, I would get looks sometimes, and it would definitely be harder to get laughs that way. But I was like, look, I just need to practice being in front of people on a stage. And, you know, if this looks ridiculous, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be cool too, is I think, you know, once we get through winter, you know, we're going to get back into some spring, you know, there'll be rooftop shows and outdoors and parks, and, you know, and those are great, you know, they'll sprout up. And then, you know, I think by, you know, May, June, we might start seeing some indoor shows if the vaccinations get through, and, you know, and, you know, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm like to the point now where I just go, I don't know. You know, I don't know.
I think we all are. Don't estimate how things are going to go. Like, I've got all my future predictions as to how this thing has gone. I've been totally wrong. So
every day's a dance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just kind of like, you know, but you know, I'm optimistic about the future. So let's just put it that way. I'm very optimistic about the future. So I think, you know, I hope everybody stays, you know, healthy and gets through this, and, you know, we come out the other side. And, you know, I just feel bad for some of the clubs that have, that have taken a big hit, you know, because there's been some clubs that, you know, obviously like Cap City and Austin's closed for good, you know.
One of our home clubs is gone forever now. So.
Yeah, one of the two that's related to this podcast, because there's DC Draft House and Arlington Draft House, and the DC had to close down.
I know, why? Come on, guys, open back up.
Yeah.
Wait till this is over and open it back up.
Yeah.
Get a new location.
Yeah.
You know? You'll do it's you know, I miss the Draft House. I like that place a lot. Draft House was that was a fun gig, you know?
Yeah.
That was a fun gig. I like that. I got to do that. I think I did that with Pablo Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That with Pablo.
Mhm.
And I was trying to get there for New Year's Eve with Renazizi, but I ended up getting stuck in LA.
Oh, yeah.
Making that trip was like, I'm not going LA to DC on the, it was an expensive flight.
Yeah, yeah. The gig will cost you money. You won't make money.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like, but you know, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. But you guys have an exciting day today in DC with the inauguration of a new president. You know, the fucking orange dude's gone.
Yeah. We're pumped. I'm
Well,
excited.
All I want to know is what the letter he left said. I wonder if it
I
just
know,
said,
right?
"Fuck it, I won."
Yeah.
I won. I think that's like I don't think he wrote him any. I mean,
Or just like a picture of a dick. Like I can imagine, like, you know, the old school drawn dicks. Like,
yeah, I think, yeah, I would be really curious, like, you know.
yeah.
Then again, he's off Twitter, so he can't really
I
do
know.
anything. Yeah, I mean, dude, why that guy didn't get kicked off Twitter fucking 2 years
3.5 years ago.
And he should have gotten kicked off Twitter while he was running for president the first time, because there was so much dangerous stuff. And at that point, that was like new, you know? So like when he was first running, why weren't people like, this is dangerous, let's just cut him off instead of give him more spotlight, which is how he ended up where he was.
Given him 4 years to build a very large white supremacist, following. But
Yeah.
But oddly enough, man, I was surprised. I'm still to this day surprised at how many women and people of color that believe in this guy, and I'm just like, are you fucking insane? And
See,
Yeah.
with women, I believe it. With women, I believe it because so many women vote with the man that they're with, which is all, I think, part of the patriarchy of wanting to be desirable to men. I think a lot of women just want to seem desirable to these, white supremacist type guys that they're with, or the kind of guys who vote for that they're with, that they're not. Because I think as a woman, if you have a lot of independent thought, I mean, how could you pick somebody who grabs you by the pussy? I don't know, but maybe that's just me.
well, I mean, I remember when the election was going on and they were interviewing people. They were interviewing a woman I think she was in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a school teacher, and she, made a decent living, or no, maybe it wasn't even, I can't remember. She made a decent living and whatever it was, and she was a Trump supporter. And her whole thing is like, okay, so I don't really like what he says, but I like what he does. And it's like,
Watching women change at the Miss Universe pageant, that's a really cool thing he does.
But I still don't get it. It's like, I just think, I just hope that, the world is in a, better place. I mean, I still think the cancel culture of this country needs to be shut the fuck down.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that a lot on this podcast.
In depth.
I mean, we'll see, but I mean, at least, I mean, who knows? I'm so tired.
I think, as a lifelong member of the left, which is a pretty broad swath with a lot of degrees, that, we're going to have to realize that we're going to have some imperfect allies, and we're going to have to suck it up. And we used to be a party about, more redemption. Everybody didn't have to be perfect to join and to progress. And I feel like we've neglected that for likes and social media currency, to our detriment. And that's one part of the lesson is this last 4 years.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at Bill Burr's a great example. He says what's on his mind, and and it was funny because I was watching the Tiger documentary the other night, and and Burr had a bit on the documentary. So obviously, it's like, speak in your mind. If you're funny, then it's okay. It's just, I think, I think cheap shots are a little harder to justify. But I think well-crafted material always wins out. So
yeah, and Burr is like the king of that. It's too funny to get canceled. Like that SNL monologue that he did, like so many people wanted to come at him, but it was just too funny. I think everyone agreed, like, sorry.
Yeah.
It was great. It was just the best. It was the best. So what else, guys? Come on, what else you got?
What else we got? God, hold on, I need to turn a light on. There we go. Whoa. What else we got? You know, hanging out with my in-laws. The Army's on my corner. I'm excited for the Army to leave tomorrow.
You think they'll leave tomorrow?
They are. They're leaving tomorrow at 6 a.m. So, but it all depended how calm things got today, which is why, like, I had the news on all day and it all looked like nice and boring. So that means at 6 a.m. tomorrow they'll leave. But it was weird.
I bet you they'll stick around till about noon. That 6 a.m. is like a lie buffer just to get people to act up at 6:01, and then we'll make 80 more arrests, and then they'll go.
Right.
I hope that's
the afternoon. I'll wait till the afternoon to go home. But that was weird. I've never experienced that where you're walking around with, you know, these Army guys with guns like next to your house. And the day one, you're like, whoa, cool. You know, it's kind of like a car accident, you know, where you can't keep your eyes off it. You're like, what? But after like day 3, you're just kind of like, this guy, and they're all very nice, by the way, the National Guard, all very nice guys. But after day 3, you're like, I don't need you, you know, watching me, you know, go to Whole Foods. Like it's
crazy. I love DC. Was such a fun time. I have a buddy who lives there, John Wheeler, and Wheeler took me, you know, we went and he picked me up and we went we did the whole like little tour, but we did it at night.
Oh, it's beautiful at night.
It was so cool to go to like the Lincoln Memorial at night. And I have these great photos because there's nobody there.
No.
It was like 6 people. It was, I think we were there in December or January.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cold,
mm-hmm.
but it wasn't ridiculous. And we got to go around and I got to see all this stuff and it got to walk up there and it was like, and it was so cool to be there. And what a great city with so many monuments and, you know, and it's like, it's just awesome. And I just, you know, I miss it. I can't wait till it's like all, you know, I just can't wait till this shit's over.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that because I've lived here my whole life and I take it for granted sometimes. I've seen probably 40% of the different monuments, museums, but then there's always stuff that's, you know, in other parts of town or you don't think about, you pass it day in, day out, and I need to be better about that. So,
yeah, dude, I just saw the Griffith Observatory the other day for the first time, and I've lived in LA for 35 years. I mean, I've seen it. Just never driven up and been and you know and like walked around and you know done the whole thing, but you know.
Yeah, I think that's similar. Like a lot of times when you live in a city, there's so much stuff that you don't see. Like I've moved around a lot and I always see the most in a city like the week before I leave because it's like, oh shit, I've lived here for how long? I gotta go see X, Y, and Z that you're supposed to see.
I think everybody's that way. I knew this couple. They were college students. So I was young. And I had done a movie for an international movie for Italy, and this couple, he was the lighting guy, and she was like a wardrobe person anyway, and they lived in Rome, and I went to visit them. I went to do a project in Rome, and I was there, and they invited me over for dinner, and they lived like half a mile from the old city. Like the Colosseum, and there's a whole old city that's underground, you know.
Wow.
There's all these tunnels and all this stuff that you can go. And I was like going like, hey, we should, you know, why don't you guys take me and show me around? They go, we've never been. And so we went, the 3 of us, and went on this like tour, and they had never been to the Colosseum. They'd never been. And we did this whole like tour of Rome, and it was so fun. But it's just like you said, they lived there, you know, lived there their whole lives.
Yeah.
Never, you know, seen it. So it was so fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, DC is also great. I say this all the time. I mean, it's pandemic now, but it's also, I think, one of the greatest places to start doing comedy because people here, they love it. They go to shows and they don't care about a name. You know, they're like, oh, there's a comedy show at the bar down the street from me. I'll go.
It's great.
And so you get to start doing like full rooms. I mean, really early, which I started doing comedy in between here and New York, and just the difference. Because I thought when I moved here, and that's when I started doing comedy. I was like, oh, obviously DC is not going to have a comedy scene. I also didn't realize you had to do comedy like every day. I was like, oh, I'm just going to go to New York like once a week on the bus and do some shows and come back. And then I realized you need to do comedy more than that. The second I started doing shows here, I mean, we're really lucky. Like stuff's really packed, and I think that's really helped with my skill as a comedian. And I'm sure Petey would say the same thing. Like as an amateur,
Absolutely.
when you're an amateur starting comic, you get real feedback really quickly. So I think
That's awesome.
it's a cool city in that sense too.
Yeah, I love DC. I've always enjoyed the crowds there. It's like one of those cities. I mean, go no further than Chappelle.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like you got great clubs there. You got the Draft House. You've got the DC Improv is world famous. It's one of the better rooms. It's like when people talk about great rooms in cities. There's great comedy cities. New York, obviously, LA. You got DC. You've got Denver has got one of the Comedy Works in Denver.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says. Everybody who comes to Draft House that tours, they always say that Denver is one of the best places that they performed at.
It's that downtown club. It's just a sick setup. You go downstairs. It's old, and it's dank, and it's not fancy. It's what makes the Comedy Store such a great club. Is it's not very nice, nothing fancy. And, it's just a black room with chairs but man, is it awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to thank Cort for doing this episode with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much on this inauguration day. We really appreciate it. And where can people get at you?
All my social media is my name, CortMcCown. And Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that shit's there. My website, same thing. And I'm kind of getting ready to revamp and redo a new podcast. So I'm not going to say anything about that yet, but that's kind of going to start putting something together with that. But and I think in end of February, I'm going to be in Providence with Steve Renazizi. So
awesome.
Hopefully that's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
I love our new president, but don't fuck shit up. Fuck up our lives now, man.
Seriously.
Don't fuck shit up, man. You're in there. You'll have a whole different group of people storming the steps, man. Be waving rainbow flags, going, "Get out here! Damn you! Get out here, Joe. We're angry."
Yeah. Give us a wave, something.
Come outside. Bring Kamala with you.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are awesome, man. Thanks so much for asking me to be here today.
Oh, hey, thanks for doing
Our
it.
pleasure. Thanks for doing it.
Of course, guys. Of course. Let me know when it's up.
We will.
Yes,
Thanks.
sir.
Yeah.
Guys.
Take care.